Awesome. I got to switch over so I can throw my hands like a pastor, do all that stuff. All righty. All right, I'm going to pray before we enter in. Jesus, we thank you for what you're doing in the lives of every single person in this building, in the lives of their family, in the lives of their children. We just thank you that the opportunity we have to worship you freely in this country and to enter into something that people across the world don't get to do. Jesus, we love you and we thank you that your spirit is here tonight and we're going to enter into an awesome time. And Jesus, I pray you soften the heart of the people in here just to receive what you have to say to them. We love you. We thank you. And in Jesus' name, amen. Awesome. All righty. So Pastor Ken started a series a few weeks ago called Unveiled, and it is discovering the truth. And so tonight I'm going to piggyback off of that. And last week, his main point, I think, was about speaking. It matters what we say, was what he said. And he really talked about how we speak life, we can speak death out of our tongue, and it really does matter what we say out of our mouths. And so tonight, my message is titled, The Faith to Believe, Speak, and Do. I'm pretty sure I changed it from what I had earlier. Oh, no, I got it. Nice. Awesome. The faith to believe, speak, and do. So if you're taking notes, you can jot that down. If not, it's all good. All right, so we're going to pick up right in 2 Corinthians 4:13. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and flip there. I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the screen. And that is this. It is written, I believed, therefore I have spoken. Since we have the same spirit of faith, we also believe and therefore speak. And so in the context of this verse, this is Paul in the Corinthians, and he's quoting David from the 116th Psalm. You could look that up. It's Psalm 116:10. And this is David recalling a time when he believed something, which produced him to speak something, which produced him to act on something. And how many of us know that we do things that we believe in our heart? You're not going to get anybody in here that's backing a cause that they don't believe in their heart. And so it's as simple as that. David believed something, and I, reading this, my biggest thing is wow, what is that thing that he was able to grasp onto to make him a world changer? And some of you may think, man, David is an awesome guy, but I'm here to tell you he made a lot of mistakes. He's a lot like all of us in here. Imperfect people loved by a perfect God. And so the biggest thing I got from this is recognizing the spirit of faith. The thing I want to hit on tonight is faith. Because every single thing we do in our lives has to start with faith. And that means that it's not on our doing. It's not how good we are. It's not how much we can believe. It's us knowing that the faith comes from God. Right? We all know the faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain. We know God brings in all the rest of the faith. And so we also believe in our lives and we also speak. So the main verse I'm going to be going out of today is 1 Samuel 17. We're going to start in verse 4. So we're going to read down right now. And we're going to get some context on where we're going with this. And we're going to be looking at the life of David. We're going to stick with that. And later on, we'll get into the life of someone else. And it says this. Then a champion came out from the armies of the Philistine named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span. I have no idea what cubits are measured as. But hey, that sounds pretty big. He had a bronze helmet on his head. And he was clothed with scale armor, which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. He also had bronze greaves on his legs and a bronze javelin slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. His shield carrier also walked before him. So the biggest thing that stuck out to me here in verses 4 through 7 is why are they describing so much Goliath? What's the point of describing this guy who ultimately is this enemy who's going to be defeated? What's the point? And it stuck out to me because even when they're describing David, you know, this little guy, this little kid who has a few stones in his pocket and a slingshot. And something that stuck out to me is that a lot of times the mountains and the Goliaths in our lives look really, really intricate. They look really big. And when you're telling somebody your problems, it's always easy to go on and on and on about the details because that's just how it is. And I think the reason that they wanted to make Goliath known, everything he was wearing, how big he was to show how big God was. I think that's the reason he used a kid like David because he defied the odds. There's no other way it could have been done but with God. And so I think, again, God wanted to show it wasn't David, but it was God who was inside of David that was going to stand up to this giant that seemed so unbeatable. So we're going to carry on now. Verse 8, it says this: he stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel and said to them, Why do you come out to draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine, and you servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants in service. So that's Goliath speaking now. So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's, if I win, you're servants to us. If you win, we're servants to you. And so I'm not going to get too much into this because this is going to be for one of the points. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we're gonna jump all the way down now to verse 45. 1 Samuel 17:45. Everybody say, please hurry up with the reading. All right, here we go. We're going to go for a long one here. 45 to 49, it says this. Then David said to the Philistine, You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. So you guys know the gist. I'm sure you guys have heard the story. If you haven't, David is stepping up and speaking for every single Israelite. He's speaking on behalf of God, and it's kind of crazy. I could just imagine seeing this little kid yelling across the battlefield to this giant, like talking like you would think reading this, David is probably like 9 feet tall, ready to go, 12 rounds with Goliath. He's not. He's a small kid who really has no experience in anything other than being with God, which is the most important thing. So this day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you. So he's pretty bold. He's throwing it all out there. And I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. So he's pretty much like, look, I'm going to not only kill you, I'm going to cut your head off, and then I'm going to leave all your dead soldiers' bodies to be eaten by the birds. Which in those days, they would let the soldiers bury their dead as a sign of respect. But David is obviously here to drop some bodies. So, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or by spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And this is my favorite part, verse 48. Then it happened. And that was something that, I don't know why, but it stuck out to me. Then it happened. And I'm thinking, well, what happened? Why is that such a turning point in this? Then it happened when the Philistine rose and came and drew near to meet David. So notice, after David said what he said, there was no other talking to be done. He said exactly what was about to happen, and Goliath walked right into it. There was no more conversation, which is odd to me. You would think he would have something back to say, trash talk, you go, I go, a shooting match. No. It says, then it happened. Exactly what David said came to pass right then. The Philistine rose and came and drew near to meet David. Then David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And that was something that was huge to me too. He didn't just walk. All right, here we go. No, he sprinted because he wasn't there to think about what was going to happen. He wasn't there to use his own human intellect on, well, man, if I run, I might pull a hammy. I can't do that. I got to be sharp. No, he already knew what was going to happen. He's like a fortune teller because guess what? He was in tune with what God was saying. And he didn't use what was in here like a lot of us try to do. A lot of times, man, it just sounds, the grace message sounds too easy. We're loved. Man, no, I got to do something. I got to work. No, we have to stop thinking and just trust God. And that's exactly what David did. And so David put his hand into the bag and took from it a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. And the stone sank into his forehead so that he fell on his face to the ground. We all know the rest. David did exactly what he said, cut the head off, all the craziness. All right, so if you notice, in this reading, I read the whole chapter a few times through, and something that it said was there was no sword in the hand of David. And that, again, that caught my attention, like, why would it go into saying that David didn't have a sword? We all knew he had the stones and the slingshot, but why say he didn't have the sword? And I'm under the impression that David knew that God had the sword. again, it wasn't the sword, like David said. We're not fighting with swords and spears. We're fighting with my God, and that's pretty much it. And he's going to trust God to do it. Don't worry, everybody. I'm getting somewhere with all this. All right. So, why doesn't it show David thinking about what to do? He just puts his hand in the bag, and he does it. Again, he was in tune with what God was doing in his life. I feel like a lot of times, even with me, God's telling me to do something, and I'm sitting there thinking like I'm in a place where I can debate with God and say, well, the Yankees play at 4. God, are you sure I got to do that? No, it's understanding that our lives were given to us to be servants. And I mean, that's the whole essence of who we are as humans. People in the world don't understand that. Sometimes we don't even understand that. We don't understand that we're here to make a difference for Jesus. And so we're going to go into 3 things that ignite our calling. 3 things, like every good pastor has. It's always 3 points that ignite our calling. All right, the first one is what we believe. What we believe is going to be the point where our lives change forever. Because once we truly believe something, you will never, ever, ever look back. If you look at anybody that runs, there's tons of people who run nonprofits or who even, I feel like God's called me, to run a business for veterans, anything. They believe that in their heart. So what do? Nobody's going to stop them. Somebody could say, you're not going to be able to do that. And they're going to say, you know what? I don't care what you have to say. Because they believe in something more than what it's going to cost them. And so 1 Samuel 17:9, we're going to go back now to that verse I told you to hold on to. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us. If we don't understand that God is taking us to defeat our Goliaths, we will forever serve them in our lives. We won't even be able to get past them. It's not a matter of God not loving us. He loves you completely, but there are things in our lives he's equipped us to do, he's called us to do, and now it takes some action. How many of us know we could say, man, I'm going to be a millionaire one day. Sit on the couch eating popcorn, watching TV all day. You may have the dream, but if you truly have the dream, nothing's going to keep you from accomplishing the dream. And so we have to understand, God called David. He could have easily said, no, I'm not going to do it, man. I got these sheep to take care of, And guess what? His life, he would have went on, and maybe, he would have done some cool things. But the difference in David's life was the fact that he said, okay, let's do it. I'm not thinking about how young I am, how small I am, how disqualified I am. He's understanding that what he has to bring to the table is nothing. But what God's called him to do is everything. And so David was able to believe because he wasn't distracted. I know that later on in David's life, we know the story of David, he gets very much distracted. And guess what? He's human like the rest of us. But in this time, he was in tune with what God was saying to him. He was in tune with the call in his life, and he wasn't distracted. So Romans 6:16 says this. This is Paul speaking. Do you not know that when you present yourself to someone as slaves for obedience, you are slaves as the one whom you obey, either of sin resulting in death or of obedience resulting in righteousness? And so again, it's the things in our lives that we are obedient to. Because obedience, a lot of people think like, oh, if you obey, it's a good thing. We could be obedient to things that they're not life-threatening. A lot of the times the things that we're distracted by, they're not going to kill us, but they're doing exactly what the devil wants, and that's taking us away from our calling. Because, the river's awesome and the beach is awesome. I love doing all those things. But when it distracts you from the call of your life, then the devil's sitting back saying, man, I did what I wanted to do. You don't even have to hurt them. Don't even have to kill them because they took themselves out of the game. And it's the same. I'm sure a lot of us in here watch basketball. If you don't, there's something called a free throw where they step to the line and they shoot the basket. They get 2 shots. Nobody's around them. They just get to shoot. And so this is something that I thought of as an example because if you watch, and it's mainly college basketball, they have their student section right in front of the guy shooting. All their kids are just going crazy. Nobody's touching the guy. Nobody's hitting him. Nobody's bumping him, waving their hand in his face. No. But what they're doing is they're distracting him. They're trying to get his attention because they know if his attention is off the basket, he's not going to score the goal. That's all the enemy wants to do. He's just waving his hand in our face. Oh, look at this. It looks really cool. Look at this over here. and we're distracted from the goal. Again, it doesn't mean that we're going to go to hell. It doesn't mean God doesn't love us. It just means we're not going to be dangerous for Jesus. And I don't know about you guys, but I just feel like life is too short not to be dangerous for Jesus. And so, carrying on with this, David understood what he believed. He understood that the belief he had came from God. It wasn't his own. Again, you could ask any business owner that started their own business, and you can say, man, how'd you come up with that idea? And if they believe in God, they're going to say, well, obviously, God gave me this dream. He gave me this vision. He gave me this idea. And even if it's somebody that doesn't serve God, they're going to say, I had this dream in my heart. And, they don't know now, but it is from God. Everything we have is a God-given dream. Trust me, I don't want to be mean, but we're not that special to come up with some of this awesome stuff that we do out here. But Jesus is awesome, and guess what? He wants us just the way we are. Imperfect, and we are perfect through him. And so David understood this thing. Whatever we believe will be what we are obedient to in our lives. So if you truly believe that you have a calling on your life, I don't care if you're 10 years old or you're 90 years old, and you could disqualify yourself and say, I ran my course and I'm kind of done. I'm just gonna, head off and do this. No, God has something for each and every person. He wants each and every person to be dangerous for him. And guess what? All it does is us saying, I'm willing to be your servant, to do what you would have me do. And so, if we truly believe the call in our life, something on the inside of us will change drastically, and we will remember the day till the day we die. And I mean, for me, I'm not any better than anybody else in here, but I felt from a young age I was called to be in ministry in some aspect. And if that meant preaching, awesome. If that meant cleaning the bathrooms at the church, awesome. But I knew from a young age that this is something I wanted to do. So when the offers for college came in to play sports, I was the type of kid, I was like, no, I know what I want to do. I'm going to do this. And again, I haven't been perfect. There's been times where I've set myself back. Again, nothing God did, my own doing, of course, because, we try to figure this all out on our own. But again, David understood that this thing that God gave him was something to hold on to. So, we'll skip down. I'm taking a while. All right. So, let's believe that we have been called to change the world for Jesus, right? David believed that his call was to live out a life that God had given him. So he spoke from a belief, not a belief in himself, but a belief in what God was doing. All right. So, the first one, again, what we believe. It ignites everything inside of us. It starts everything we're going to do. And number two is what we say. So I have a fun little one here. If you do CrossFit, it's awesome. I love it. But how many of us have ever known somebody who, is really into working out or CrossFit? And I let you know how you know, because they won't stop talking about it. And it's cool. Honestly, I give them props because guess what? They believe in something that they believe is changing their life, being healthy, working out, and it's great. I wish Christians were more like that. I wish we understood, wow, the thing we're doing is good enough to tell people about. Not, man, I can't tell that person I'm Christian because, they're going to think I'm a weirdo, right? These people who do this stuff, I tell you what, when somebody's a vegan. Why? Because they won't stop talking about it, right? Anytime you're at a family get-together, again, I love you all. Just a fun little whatnot. But guess what? They're never going to stop talking about it. Why? Because they have this belief that they're standing behind something that's pushing something that's making a difference in the world. So what if we all got behind the idea that there was somebody who came and died for each and every one of us, and we could get behind it and push it? Again, it's awesome. So what we say changes the entire aspect of how we live our lives and how we view God in our lives. Again, if I go into a situation and I'm like, man, God, if it be your will that you heal this person. Well, you know what? Why don't I speak from a place of understanding that God already did it? Yeah. And how about this? God, this person is going to be healed, and speak from a place of victory, not a place of crossing my fingers hoping, right? And so we're going to go to Acts 4, verse 18 through 21. And it says this: and when they had summoned them, they commanded them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus. This is Peter and John when they were arrested. But Peter and John answered and said to them, whether it is right in the sight of God to give heed to you rather than God, you be the judge. For we cannot stop speaking about what we have seen and heard. When they had threatened them further, they let them go, finding no basis on which to punish them on account of the people, because they were all glorifying God for what had happened. Nothing was going to stop them from speaking what they believed. Right away, they started speaking again. Why? Again, because they had a belief in the first place that what they were doing was more important than their lives, right? And that's how each and every one of these guys ended up dying, either being martyrs or dying in Jesus' name, because they were pushing something that was more important than them. And so the things that we say in difficulty will determine our faith in God in that situation. Because when we face a situation, what's going to come out? There's a typical example here. When you have a sponge and you fill it with water, right? It gets really full, and then when you squeeze it, what comes out? The water you put in. And we're the same way. When we're filling ourselves with understanding and belief that what God is doing is more important than us, when we get squeezed in a difficult time, we don't run off. We don't say, man, we don't just ditch and leave. No, we stand there and speak in a place of victory, because what's coming out of us is what we're believing. And again, so let's look at David and see how he spoke into this situation. And we're going to go back again to 1 Samuel, verse 48. Then it happened, David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword and spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord." All the rest of that, we already went over that. Again, right when David finished talking, then it happened. Well, what happened? Exactly what he said was going to happen, because he wasn't just throwing it out there, rolling the dice, saying, man, should I say this? It seems a little over the top. I don't want them to get really mad and kill me. No, he was saying this from a place of belief and understanding, and guess what? Once he spoke it, it came into existence. So David spoke over the circumstance because he believed in the call in his life and trusted who God was in his life. Once we believe, we will speak it, and once it comes out of our mouth, we'll do it. And that's the third point, what we do. And that's having faith. That's the essence of every single thing, every single one of these points, everything we do in our lives, it's faith. Because there's no way we can do it without it. We can't do it on our own knowledge, on our own wishing. We can't sit there and calculate it all out and say, man, I can do this. It just can't be done. Because what's going to end up happening is, guess what? We see people do it all the time. They come and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get involved. It's going to be awesome. And then 2 weeks later, they're gone. And they're like, hey, what happened, man? I just got burnt out. I can't do it all. Again, we have to understand that it's not us in the first place. We're sacrificing our lives for Jesus, not for ourselves. So what we do has to be completely based on faith, because if it's in our own power, we're going to see it's going to get us nowhere. It's going to leave us burned out, offended, hurt, thinking, man, what did I do wrong? How could I fix it? And we have the mindset's all wrong. It's all about Jesus, not about what we can do. So an example of this is having an experience. Again, because we're not going to do something that we don't have an experience doing it. And let me explain that. David was able to speak in that moment because he had experienced God in his life, and he drew from that. Right? How many times do we face a tough situation and we act like God hasn't already proved himself in every aspect of our life, right? We're like, man, God, please come through. Please, man, please, please. He's like, did he not see what I did for you 2 months ago? Did he not see what I did for you 5 years ago? Did he not see? And so often we don't draw from our past experiences with what God has already done in our lives. And we're like acting like, his reputation and what he's done doesn't stand strong enough, right? How many of us like In-N-Out in here? Not you vegans. Sorry, no, I'm just kidding. So this is something, I love food. I love In-N-Out. Is that an In-N-Out cup right there? Jesus is here in this place. Awesome. And so how many of us know if anybody ever visits from out of state, where do you want to go to eat? And it's like In-N-Out, right? My sister-in-law, Paige, came from Indiana. The first place we went was In-N-Out. Right? And it's what we do. It's a California trademark. But why? Why is the reputation so strong? Why? Because it's great. Because we all eat it. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's the best burger around. Whatever. But we are drawing from a past experience we had to then state a claim that we're getting behind, expecting the other person we're talking to grab a hold of it too with us. And so why, when we come into situations, don't we grab from, well, guess what? Jesus healed me 2 months ago from a disease I was dying from. You should get behind this cause because this guy is something else. You know what I mean? But, and that's the same thing. Each and every one of us have experience, whether you're, you feel like, well, man, I've never heard God in my life, or man, I've never had a miracle. I've never seen somebody healed. You're a walking miracle, because guess what? Each and every one of us wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Jesus. Plain and simple. Each and every one of us wouldn't have the grace and love from God if it wasn't for Jesus. So we all have a past experience to come from, right? And so instead of having faith knowing he will come through, we act as if he needs to prove himself again to us. And so, again, let's look back at David, and let's see how his actions were a direct result of his faith in who God said he would be. Again, it wasn't who David was guessing God would be. David was in tune to what God was saying, and God told him who he was going to be, so he knew it. He didn't have to roll the dice. He didn't have to hope. God's doing the same thing with us. He's like, hey, I told you what I was going to do. Why aren't you going out and doing everything that you've ever felt you should do in your life? Because I'm backing you. I'm right behind you. And so 1 Samuel 17:48, and I quoted this, and it's so simple. He ran toward the line. How many times have we ran toward a difficulty in our life knowing it's going to fall at our feet in an instant? Because a lot of the times it's like, well, it's God's will. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. How many times have we said, you know what? That cancer's there. I'm going to run at it right now. I'm going to run to that line because I know what God told me. I know what I'm standing on. And that giant's going to fall at my feet right now. And so it's not our actions that produce our faith. It's not about, man, I need to go to church 5 times a week and I'm going to have this faith now. No. It's our faith in God that provides our actions in our life. Because I tell you this much, you're not going to get people being dangerous for Jesus on their own. They're doing it because they have faith. Because I know people that serve in this church that work 50 hours a week and have kids, have families, do all this stuff, and yet they come here and they sacrifice their time. Why? Because they've grabbed onto this thing and they're not going to let it go. They have a belief. They've spoken it over their life, and they're doing it. And guess what? Their faith and understanding of God is providing an action, which then, it's a nice big cycle. It just produces blessing and joy and life. It's awesome. So, David felt like his call and duty was to lay his life down for others. King Saul felt like it was his duty to preserve his own life at the expense of the lives of others. So that's the difference between somebody who has faith in God and is holding on to what God's doing and somebody that's doing it on their own. A guy like King Saul who's doing it on his own is like, man, well, I know I can't defeat him, so I need to have some other people get killed because I can't do it. Where David is coming from a place, well, if it means that I die, I'm doing it for something bigger than me. So David acted on what he believed and what he spoke because there was no other option for him. David, he didn't have anything else. He didn't. He tended the sheep. And if you remember, when Samuel came to Jesse's house to look at all his sons, they forgot about David in the field. Guess what? His life was on a path of mediocrity. And it would have been all good and dandy if he would have stayed on it. Again, Jesus still loves you. It would have been great. He would have lived till he was 100 or 500, however old they lived in the Bible days. But guess what? David knew that if it meant he died tomorrow, he would rather be dangerous for Jesus than to live a life of mediocrity doing nothing. And again, this is something I challenge myself with. I'm not any better, and it's something that I love to challenge you guys with because we're family. Again, you can keep doing what you're doing. Jesus loves you. We love you. But God has called each and every one of us in here to do something more. There's more in the tank. There's more to do, whether you feel like you're qualified or not, whether you feel like you're good at something or not, there's a place for you. So, our calling will come to fruition when we believe what God has given us, right? Our belief.